The music in the rooftop lounge was loud enough to drown out honesty. That was the first thing I noticed when I walked into the company party holding a gift bag and wearing a smile I no longer felt qualified to wear. Blue neon lights washed over the crowd of sharply dressed employees from Morrison and Blake Consulting. Glass walls overlooked downtown Chicago, where rain streaked across the skyline like the city itself was trying to erase something ugly. Waiters moved through the room carrying champagne flutes. Laughter bounced from table to table. Everyone looked successful. Everyone looked polished. Everyone looked like they belonged. I didn't. I stood near the entrance for a second too long, adjusting the cuffs of my charcoal suit while trying not to look uncomfortable. My wife, Emily Carter, had begged me to attend this annual corporate celebration for weeks. "Please, Ryan," Emily had said that morning while fastening her earrings in front of the bathroom mirror. "You never come to these things. People are starting to think I invented you." Back then, her joke made me smile. Now, remembering it years later, it felt like foreshadowing. Emily worked as a senior marketing strategist at Morrison and Blake. Smart, ambitious, beautiful in a way that made strangers soften when she walked into a room. We had been married for 7 years. No children yet. We kept saying we wanted to wait until life slowed down. Life never slowed down. Especially not for Emily. She was climbing the corporate ladder faster than anyone in her department. Late meetings became normal. Weekend networking events became mandatory. Phone calls during dinner became routine. And me. I was a high school history teacher on the south side of Chicago. Predictable salary, predictable hours, predictable life. At least, that's probably how Emily saw me by then. "Ryan." Emily's voice snapped me back to the present. She crossed the room toward me in a sleek emerald green dress that hugged her perfectly. Her dark brown hair rested over one shoulder, and she looked so stunning that for one dangerous second, I forgot every insecurity I'd brought into the building. She kissed my cheek quickly. "You made it." I said I would. "I know," she replied distractedly, already glancing toward a group of executives near the bar. "I'm just surprised." The comment stung more than she intended. At least I hoped she didn't intend it. Emily grabbed my hand and pulled me deeper into the crowd. "Come on, I want you to meet some people." For the next 30 minutes, I smiled until my jaw hurt. "This is my husband, Ryan." Handshake. Nod. Small talk. Another handshake. Another fake laugh. Most conversations ended the second people learned I was a teacher. Not rudely, just politely disinterested. I understood it. This room valued money and status. Teachers ranked somewhere between furniture and background music. Eventually, Emily got pulled into a conversation with 2 executives discussing some international campaign. She squeezed my arm absent-mindedly. "Don't disappear, okay?" "Where would I go?" She smiled without hearing the sadness in my voice. Then she vanished into the crowd. I moved toward the outdoor terrace for air. Rain had stopped, but the city still smelled wet. Chicago lights reflected across the river below like shattered gold. I loosened my tie and leaned against the railing. "Escaping too." The voice came from beside me. I turned and saw a woman around my age standing near the edge of the terrace holding a martini glass. Blonde hair, navy blue cocktail dress, sharp eyes that looked both amused and exhausted at the same time. "Something like that," I replied. She laughed softly. "Corporate parties are basically adult hostage situations." That got my first genuine smile of the night. "You work here too." "Unfortunately." She extended her hand. "Claire Donovan." "Ryan Carter." The moment she shook my hand, she tilted her head slightly. "Wait, Carter." "Yeah." "You related to Emily Carter from marketing." I smiled proudly. "She's my wife." Claire blinked once. Then she laughed. Not politely. Not casually. A real, shocked laugh. "Oh my God." "What?" Claire covered her mouth, suddenly looking horrified. "No, nothing, sorry, I just..." Her eyes studied me carefully now. "You're Emily's husband." Something in her tone tightened my chest. Yes. Another pause. The city noise below suddenly sounded very far away. Claire looked like someone debating whether to pull a fire alarm. Finally, she took a sip of her drink. That's wow. What is? Nothing. You keep saying that. She exhaled slowly. I didn't realize Emily's husband actually existed. The sentence hit strangely. What's that supposed to mean? Claire immediately shook her head. No, I didn't mean it like that. Then how did you mean it? She hesitated. That hesitation changed everything. Because people hesitate before telling dangerous truths. I should probably keep my mouth shut, Claire said quietly. My stomach tightened. About what? Claire glanced through the glass doors back into the party, where Emily stood laughing beside a tall man in a gray suit. The man rested his hand on Emily's lower back. Too comfortably. Too naturally. My eyes narrowed. Claire noticed. And in that exact second, she realized I'd seen it too. That's Daniel Mercer, she said carefully. Okay. He's the regional director. I kept staring through the glass. Emily leaned closer to Daniel while he whispered something into her ear. She laughed. Not her professional laugh. Her real laugh. The one I used to hear during midnight drives and lazy Sunday mornings. Something cold moved through my ribs. Claire looked deeply uncomfortable now. I seriously thought you knew. Knew what? She went silent again. Every instinct in my body screamed at me to walk away from the conversation. But another part of me, the part already sensing the crack beneath my marriage, needed to hear the rest. So I asked the question that changed my life. How close are Emily and Daniel? Claire swallowed hard. Ryan. How close? The music from inside pulsed against the glass doors. Claire lowered her voice. People in the office think they're together. The world stopped moving for a second. Not dramatically. Not loudly. Quietly. Like an elevator cable snapping before the fall begins. I stared at her. What? Claire looked genuinely sorry now. I assumed everyone knew. Emily never really corrects people when they mention him. My heartbeat turned uneven. No, you're misunderstanding something. I hope I am. You are. Claire said nothing. That silence hurt worse than accusations. I looked back through the glass again. Emily and Daniel stood too close together. Now that I was seeing it, I couldn't unsee it. The hand on her back. The eye contact. The comfort. God. How many times had this happened while I stayed home grading papers? She talks about him constantly at work, Claire admitted carefully. Lunches together, business trips together, everybody just assumed. She's married. Claire looked at me with painful sympathy. Again, I didn't think she hid you. I thought maybe you two were separated. The sentence punched straight through my chest. Separated? Was that what Emily told people? Suddenly, dozens of small memories rushed into my mind all at once. Emily turning her phone face down. Emily smiling at late-night texts. Emily protecting her screen. Emily working overtime every Friday for the last 4 months. My breathing grew shallow. No, I whispered mostly to myself. No, Emily would. Wouldn't what? Cheat. Lie. Humiliate me. The terrifying part was that I no longer knew. Claire touched my arm gently. Ryan, I'm sorry. I stepped away instinctively. Not because of Claire. Because I suddenly felt exposed. Like the only man in a room who didn't know the joke everyone else was laughing at. Inside the party, Daniel leaned close to Emily again. And this time, Emily touched his chest. Not accidental. Not professional. Intimate. My stomach twisted violently. Claire cursed under her breath. Oh God. I barely heard her. 7 years. 7 years together. And somehow a stranger at a rooftop party was showing me pieces of my own marriage I'd never seen before. Do you want me to get Emily? Claire asked quietly. No. The answer came instantly. Because at that moment, I realized something terrifying. I didn't trust myself to speak. Not yet. Not while rage and heartbreak were colliding inside my chest like two speeding trains. I forced myself to breathe slowly. Think. Observe. Don't explode. That's what I kept telling myself. Claire studied me carefully. You really didn't know. It wasn't a question anymore. No, I admitted. The pity in her eyes almost broke me. I'm sorry. I nodded once. Then I did the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. I walked back into the party, pretending everything was normal. The lights felt brighter now. The laughter sounded crueler. Every glance between Emily and Daniel suddenly looked suspicious. Had everyone here known except me? Had they all smiled at me tonight, while secretly feeling sorry for the pathetic husband being cheated on right in front of him? I grabbed a whiskey from a passing tray and drank half of it immediately. Emily spotted me approaching. There you are, she smiled. I was looking for you. I stared at her face. Same brown eyes. Same lips. Same woman I kissed goodbye every morning. But suddenly, she felt unfamiliar. Like someone wearing Emily's skin. Ryan, she asked softly. Yeah. You okay? That question nearly made me laugh. Instead, I looked toward Daniel. He extended his hand confidently. Daniel Mercer. I shook it. Firm grip. Expensive watch. Perfect smile. The kind of man who had probably never lost at anything in his life. Emily S. told me a lot about you, Daniel said. Funny. Emily barely mentioned him at home. That's so, I replied. Of course, you're the teacher. The teacher. Not Ryan. Not her husband. Just the teacher. Daniel smiled again. You married way above your league, my friend. Emily laughed lightly. And for the first time in 7 years, I saw something inside my wife that terrified me. She didn't deny it. Not jokingly. Not lovingly. She just smiled. Like she agreed. Something cracked quietly inside me. I smiled back anyway. Because sometimes the most dangerous moment in a marriage is not when love dies. It's when respect dies. And standing there between my wife and the man everyone believed she belonged to, I realized respect had already been buried. I just hadn't noticed the funeral. Daniel got pulled away by another executive moments later. Emily finally turned fully toward me. You're being weird. Am I? Yes. I shrugged. Maybe I'm just tired. You hate these events. I came for you. Emily softened slightly. I know. Then her phone buzzed. She looked down instantly. And smiled. That smile. The one people can't hide when the message matters. I watched carefully. Who is it? Worked. A lie. A tiny lie. But once you notice one lie, you start noticing all of them. Must be important. It's nothing urgent. She slipped the phone back into her purse quickly. Too quickly. My chest tightened again. I suddenly remembered every night she'd guarded that phone like classified government secrets. Every shower she took with it nearby. Every late text she answered in another room. Every locked screen. Had I really been this blind? Or had I simply trusted her too much? There's a difference. A painful difference. Claire avoided eye contact with me for the rest of the evening. Probably because she realized she de-detonated a bomb without meaning to. But honestly, I was grateful. Because once the illusion shattered, I finally started seeing reality. And reality was ugly. Over the next hour, I watched Emily carefully. Not obsessively. Not dramatically. Quietly. And the more I watched, the worse it got. She looked for Daniel constantly across the room. Their eyes met too often. Their body language felt practiced. Familiar. Intimate. At one point, Daniel whispered something while passing behind her. Emily bit her lip, trying not to smile. That nearly destroyed me. Because that expression wasn't professional. That expression belonged to a woman emotionally connected to someone. Someone who wasn't me. By 11 p.m., the party finally started thinning out. Emily approached me while grabbing her coat. Ready? I looked at her for a long moment. Was this woman really going home with me after spending all night emotionally orbiting another man? Apparently, yes. Because she acted completely normal. We rode the elevator down in silence. The tension between us was thick enough to choke on. Finally, Emily glanced sideways at me. You seriously okay? I stared at the glowing floor numbers. Can I ask you something? Sure. Do people at your office know you're married? Emily frowned immediately. What kind of question is that? A simple one. Obviously they know. Do they? Yes. I turned toward her fully now. Then why does your coworker think you and Daniel are together? Emily froze. Only for half a second. But I saw it. And once you catch someone reacting before speaking, you learn the truth usually arrives before the words do. What coworker? Claire. Emily's expression shifted subtly. Not guilt exactly. Calculation. She misunderstood. Did she? Yes. The elevator doors opened into the parking garage. Cold air rushed in. Emily walked ahead quickly in her heels. People gossip in corporate offices, Ryan. It's not a big deal. I followed her slowly. Are you sleeping with him? Emily stopped walking instantly. Silence. Huge. Heavy. Terrifying silence. Then she turned around sharply. What? You heard me. Her face hardened. Jesus Christ. Are you? No. The answer came fast. Too fast. Angry. Defensive. Not hurt. That mattered. Then why do people think you're together? Because Daniel and I work closely. That doesn't explain all of it. Emily crossed her arms tightly. Claire needs to mind her own business. I stared at my wife under the dim garage lights. Something felt profoundly wrong. Not just because of the accusation. Because of the energy. The distance. The irritation. An innocent person usually tries to comfort pain. A guilty person tries to control damage. And Emily looked more annoyed than heartbroken. I can't believe you'd even ask me that, she muttered. I laughed quietly. A broken laugh. I can't believe I had to hear about my marriage from a stranger. Emily looked away first. That hurt more than anything. Because people look away when truth becomes dangerous. The drive home was silent, except for rain tapping against the windshield again. Chicago blurred past us in streaks of gold and gray. Emily stared out her window. I stared at the road. And somewhere between downtown and our apartment, I realized the man sitting in that car was no longer the same husband who walked into the party earlier that night. Because betrayal changes you before the actual truth even arrives. Suspicion alone rewires your heart. By the time we reached home, I already knew one thing for cert. Whether Emily had physically cheated or not, she had emotionally left our marriage a long time ago. And deep down, I think she knew I finally saw it. I didn't sleep that night. Emily did. That was the part I remember most clearly. Not the silence. Not the argument replaying in my head. Not even the ache sitting inside my chest like broken glass. It was the fact that she slept. Peacefully. Like our marriage hadn't just cracked open in a parking garage. Rain tapped against the apartment windows while I sat alone in the dark living room staring at the Chicago skyline. The digital clock on the microwave glowed 3:17 a.m. in cold blue numbers. My whiskey had gone warm an hour earlier. I still held the glass anyway. Behind me, our bedroom door remained slightly open. I could hear Emily breathing softly under expensive hotel-quality blankets we once picked out together while joking about becoming real adults. Back then, we still laughed together in furniture stores. Back then, she still reached for my hand automatically. I closed my eyes. And suddenly, Memories attacked me all at once. Emily crying on our wedding day. Emily dancing barefoot in our kitchen 3 years earlier. Emily holding my face during hard times when my father died. How does someone go from loving you like that to looking at another man the way she looked at Daniel? That question nearly destroyed me before dawn. At 6:30 a.m., Emily finally walked into the kitchen wearing one of my old college shirts. Normally, that sight would have warmed me. Now it felt cruel. "You never came to bed," she said quietly. "I know." She stood there awkwardly for a second before opening the refrigerator. "We should talk." I stared into my coffee. "Yes, we should." Emily sighed. "Ryan, I'm not having an affair." "You already said that." "Because it's true." "Okay." She frowned immediately. "What does that mean?" "It means I heard you." "That's not the same as believing me." I looked up finally. "Should I?" The question hit harder than I intended. Emily leaned against the counter defensively. "You're acting paranoid." "No, I'm reacting to behavior." "Daniel is my boss." "Daniel touches your back like he owns you." "That's ridiculous." "Is it?" She looked frustrated now. "What exactly do you want from me?" "Honesty." "Transparency." "Regret." But the woman standing in my kitchen looked more inconvenienced than remorseful. "I want to know why your coworker thought you were dating another man." Emily rubbed her temples. "Oh my God, Ryan, office gossip isn't reality." "Then why don't people know you're married?" "They do know." "Claire didn't." "She's in another department." I stood up slowly. "Emily, are you unhappy with me?" The question softened her expression briefly. For the first time since the party, genuine emotion crossed her face. "That's not fair." "It's honest." Emily looked away. And that silence answered more than words ever could. My chest tightened painfully. "How long?" "What?" "How long have you been unhappy?" She folded her arms tightly. "I don't know." "Try." Emily exhaled slowly. "Things have been different for a while." There it was. The beginning of every marriage funeral. Things have been different. Translation. I emotionally left before you noticed. I nodded slowly. "Why didn't you tell me?" "You were comfortable." The sentence landed like a slap. "Comfortable?" "Yes." Emily's eyes finally met mine fully now. "You stopped trying, Ryan." I stared at her in disbelief. "I stopped trying." "You got settled." "Settled?" "You stopped growing." The room suddenly felt smaller. Emily continued before I could respond. "You teach the same classes every year, same routines, same everything. You don't challenge yourself anymore." I laughed once in shock. "So this is about money?" "No." "Status?" "That's not what I'm saying." "It sounds exactly like what you're saying." Emily looked frustrated again. "You don't understand ambition." That sentence cut deeper than she realized, because she said it with complete sincerity. Like my life had somehow become smaller in her eyes. Like being a teacher meant I lacked ambition. I stared at the woman I married and barely recognized her. "You used to admire that I taught kids." "I still do." "No, you tolerate it now." Silence filled the kitchen. Ugly silence. The kind that exposes truths both people were avoiding. Finally, Emily spoke quietly. "I just thought we'd become more by now." "We?" "You know what I meant." "No." Actually, I didn't. Because I had spent 7 years believing love mattered more than titles or salaries. Apparently, Emily had slowly changed the rules without telling me. And maybe the most painful part, I think she'd already started comparing me to Daniel long before I knew his name. "I need to get to work," Emily muttered eventually. Of course she did. "Work? Always work." She grabbed her purse and car keys quickly. At the front door she paused. "Ryan." I waited. "I'm not cheating on you." Then she left. And somehow that reassurance felt emptier than silence. The apartment became painfully quiet. I called in sick to school for the first time in almost 2 years. Then I made a decision that would change everything. I checked our phone records. At first, I hated myself for doing it. By noon, I hated myself for waiting so long. One number appeared constantly over the last 4 months. Hundreds of texts. Late-night calls. Weekend calls. Daniel Mercer. My hands actually started shaking. I stared at the screen, feeling physically sick. Maybe there was an explanation. Coworkers communicated. Managers called after hours. But not like this. Not every night. Not at 11 p.m. Not at 6 a.m. Not during weekends. This wasn't work. This was attachment. I sat there staring at the evidence, while memories rearranged themselves in my mind like a nightmare puzzle, finally making sense. Emily working late. Emily smiling at her phone. Emily emotionally absent at dinner. Emily canceling date nights. Emily protecting her screen. I suddenly remembered our anniversary dinner 2 months earlier. She spent half the meal texting. When I asked who it was, she smiled and said, "Just work." Now I wondered if Daniel had been sitting on the other side of those messages, while I paid for candles and wine like a fool. My stomach twisted violently. At 1:40 p.m., my phone rang. Claire Donovan. I stared at the screen for several seconds before answering. "Hello." "Hey, Ryan." Her voice sounded nervous. "Yeah. I probably shouldn't be calling. You already detonated my life, might as well continue." Claire went quiet briefly. "I deserve that." I rubbed my forehead. "No, sorry, that wasn't fair." "You okay?" "No." Honesty felt easier now. Claire hesitated. "There's something else you should know." Every muscle in my body tightened. "What?" I almost didn't call because I don't want to create more problems. "Claire." She inhaled slowly. "Emily and Daniel went to Seattle together last month for a conference." "I know." "No, I mean, they extended the trip." My chest turned cold. "What?" "They stayed 2 extra days after the conference ended." I stopped breathing for a second. Emily told me the conference schedule changed. She said flights got delayed. "Oh God." "Oh." "That's why people talk," Claire continued quietly. "They act like a couple when they travel." I sat down slowly at the kitchen table because my legs suddenly felt weak. Did anyone actually see them together? Another pause. "Yes." I closed my eyes. "Doing what?" "At a restaurant first." "That's not proof." "I know." Silence. Then Claire whispered the sentence that shattered what remained of my denial. "One of the account managers saw them kissing outside their hotel." Everything inside me stopped. Literally stopped. Like my body no longer understood how to function. No anger. No yelling. No dramatic explosion. Just numbness. Pure devastating numbness. Because the moment's suspicion becomes confirmation. Something inside you dies quietly. I don't remember hanging up. I don't remember how long I sat there afterward. I only remember staring at our wedding photo across the apartment. Emily smiling up at me in white lace. My arm around her waist. 2 people promising forever. And all I could think was, when did you stop loving me enough to tell the truth? Around 5 p.m., I heard keys at the front door. Emily walked inside carrying takeout containers. "I brought dinner," she said carefully. Then she saw my face. And immediately knew something changed. "What happened?" I held up my phone slowly. "Seattle." Color drained from her face instantly. That reaction told me everything. "You checked my phone records." "You kissed him." Emily froze completely. The room became impossibly still. "No," she whispered weakly. "Don't." Tears immediately filled her eyes. "Ryan, don't insult me by lying again." Emily set the food down with shaking hands. "It wasn't what you think." I laughed bitterly. "There it is." The universal anthem of guilty people. It was one mistake. One mistake. Interesting how betrayal always gets reduced to singular moments by the person causing the damage. As if months of lies magically compress into one tiny accident. How long? I asked quietly. Emily cried silently now. Emily. A few months. The words nearly knocked the air from my lungs. A few months. Not one kiss. Not one drunken mistake. Months. How far? She covered her mouth, crying harder. Emily. We slept together twice. I turned away immediately. Because hearing the details physically hurt. Like someone driving nails into my ribs. Emily moved toward me desperately. Ryan, please. Don't touch me. She stopped instantly. I stared out the apartment window, while downtown Chicago blurred through tears I refused to let fall. Twice. My wife slept with another man twice. At least that's the number she admitted. God knows what the real number was. Why? I whispered. Emily cried quietly behind me. I don't know. Yes, you do. I felt invisible. I laughed again in disbelief. Invisible? You stopped seeing me. I built my entire life around you. You stopped choosing me emotionally. I turned around sharply. So you chose someone else physically. Emily flinched. I hated myself afterward. But not enough to stop. Silence. That silence answered everything. You loved him? I asked. Emily looked horrified. No. The answer came instantly this time. Truthfully. That mattered. Then what was it? She sat down slowly, tears streaking mascara down her face. He made me feel exciting again. The honesty destroyed me more than the affair itself. Because it was selfish. Shallow. Human. No grand romance. No tragic love story. Just ego. Attention. Validation. A marriage destroyed because another man made her feel exciting. I sat across from her feeling like a stranger in my own home. Did he know about me? Yes. That hurt too. Another man knowingly sleeping with someone's wife while shaking my hand at a party. I suddenly remembered Daniel saying, "You married above your league." The humiliation burned through my bloodstream. How many people know? Emily looked down. I don't know. Stop lying. Some people suspected. Enough to pity me. She started crying harder. That was answer enough. I stood up immediately and walked toward the bedroom. Ryan, where are you going? Packing. No. Yes. You can't leave. I turned around slowly. You already left, Emily. That sentence broke her completely. She sobbed openly now. I made a mistake. No, you made choices. Please don't do this. I stared at her for a long moment. Part of me still loved her. That was the tragedy. Love doesn't vanish immediately when betrayal arrives. Sometimes it lingers painfully while trust bleeds to death. I would have forgiven almost anything except dishonesty, I said quietly. Emily looked shattered. I was scared. So you lied. I didn't want to lose you. I shook my head slowly. You lost me the moment you protected him more than our marriage. She collapsed onto the couch crying, while I packed clothes into a duffel bag with trembling hands. Every object inside that bedroom suddenly felt contaminated by memory. The bed. The photos. The framed anniversary notes. Had she texted Daniel while lying beside me? Had she kissed me after kissing him? Those thoughts nearly made me sick. When I returned to the living room, Emily stood quickly. Please stay tonight. I can't. Ryan. I grabbed my keys. Then paused at the door. One question. Emily wiped tears from her face desperately. Anything. Were you ever going to tell me? Silence. Long, terrible silence. And in that silence, I got my final answer. No. She was. I nodded once slowly. Then I walked out of the apartment, while my wife cried behind me. But the worst part, as the elevator doors closed, I realized I wasn't just grieving infidelity. I was grieving the death of the woman I thought I married. And somewhere deep down, I think Emily finally realized that too. I moved into a hotel 3 blocks from Lake Michigan. Room 1814. Gray walls, gray carpet, gray skies outside the window. It felt appropriate. For the first week, I barely functioned. I called my principal and requested personal leave from school. I ignored almost every text from friends and family. I stopped shaving. I stopped eating regularly. I spent entire nights staring at the city lights wondering how a marriage could collapse so completely while 2 people still technically loved each other. Because that was the cruel part. I still loved Emily. And judging by her nonstop phone calls and voicemails, she still loved me too. Or at least she loved losing me. There's a difference. The first voicemail arrived 30 minutes after I left the apartment. Ryan, please answer me. Please, I know I don't deserve it, but just let me explain everything. The second voicemail came at 2:11 a.m. I ended it with Daniel, I swear to God I ended it, please come home. By the third day, her voice sounded destroyed. I'll quit my job, I'll do anything, please don't disappear like this. I listened to every voicemail exactly once. Then I deleted them. Not because I stopped caring. Because caring hurt too much. On the 8th day, my younger sister Megan showed up unexpectedly at the hotel after my principal contacted her. The moment she saw me, her face fell. Oh my God. I tried smiling. It didn't work. Megan closed the hotel door behind her slowly. You look terrible. Thank you. I'm serious, Ryan. She sat beside me on the bed while I stared at the muted television. What happened? I didn't answer immediately. Because saying the words out loud made everything more real. Finally, I whispered. She cheated on me. Megan went completely still. What? With a coworker. Her expression darkened instantly. That bitch. I almost defended Emily automatically. 7 years of loyalty doesn't disappear overnight. Instead, I just rubbed my face tiredly. It's complicated. No, actually, it's not. Megan rarely cursed. That's how angry she was. She cheated, end of story. I stared at the floor. She says it only happened twice. Megan laughed coldly. And you believe that? No. Silence filled the room briefly. Then my sister asked the question I'd been avoiding myself. What are you going to do? I looked toward the rain-covered window. I don't know. You still love her. It wasn't a question. Yes. That's the problem. She was right. Love becomes dangerous after betrayal because it clouds self-respect. Part of me wanted to run back home and pretend none of this happened. Another part wanted to erase Emily from my entire life forever. Both impulses were exhausting. Megan studied me carefully. You know what hurts the most about cheating? What? It's not even the sex. I looked at her. It's the humiliation. The word hit hard because it was true. Humiliation. That was the feeling poisoning everything. Knowing another man shook my hand while sleeping with my wife. Knowing coworkers whispered behind my back. Knowing I walked into that party proudly wearing a wedding ring while everyone else knew my marriage was rotting. That humiliation burned hotter than heartbreak. Megan squeezed my shoulder gently. You didn't deserve this. I nodded quietly. Then my phone buzzed. Emily. Again. Megan looked at the screen. You gonna answer? I stared at her name for several seconds. Then finally. I did. Hello. The silence on the other end lasted 2 full seconds before Emily burst into tears. Oh my God. Her relief sounded painful. Ryan, please don't hang up. I'm listening. I need to see you. No. Please. No. Ryan. I said no. She cried harder. I miss you. The sentence twisted something inside me. I closed my eyes. Emily, what exactly do you miss? Silence. Then quietly. You. Which version? What? The husband who loved you, or the husband who paid bills while you chased excitement with someone else? Emily sobbed openly now. I hate myself. That doesn't help me. Another silence. Then she whispered something that changed the entire conversation. Daniel's wife knows. My eyes opened immediately. What? She found out. I sat upright slowly. How? Someone at work told her. Probably Claire. Emily's breathing sounded shaky through the phone. She confronted him 3 days ago. Good. The thought arrived instantly and without guilt. Good. Are they divorcing? I think so. I almost laughed. Daniel Mercer. Regional director. Confident smile. Perfect life. Turns out betrayal destroys more than one home at a time. What does that have to do with me? I asked. Nothing, I just thought you should know. No. What Emily really wanted was to remind me she wasn't the only villain. People do that when guilt suffocates them. They search for shared blame to soften their own reflection. But honestly, I didn't care about Daniel anymore. He was garbage. That part was simple. The real devastation came from Emily choosing him. Ryan, she whispered, can we please meet? I hesitated. Megan shook her head aggressively from across the room. But deep down, I needed closure. Not reconciliation. Closure. 1 hour, I said finally. Tomorrow. Emily broke down crying again. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. The next evening, I met my wife at a small Italian restaurant near the river where we used to celebrate anniversaries. That was intentional. I wanted to see whether the memories hurt her too. They did. The moment Emily saw me walking toward the table, she started crying immediately. She looked thinner already. Exhausted. Destroyed. Good clothes couldn't hide guilt. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then Emily whispered, You cut your hair. I almost smiled sadly. You noticed. I notice everything about you. Funny. She noticed everything except the moment our marriage started dying. I sat down slowly across from her. The candlelight between us felt like a funeral. Emily twisted her wedding ring nervously. I'm so sorry. I nodded once. I know. No, I mean it. I know. Tears rolled down her face again. I ruined everything. Yes. The honesty hit her hard. Good. No more softening reality. No more protecting her feelings while mine bled out. The waiter approached awkwardly, sensed the emotional landmine at the table, then retreated after taking drink orders. Emily looked at me carefully. You've changed. So have you. That nearly made her cry again. I ended everything with Daniel immediately. After getting caught, Emily looked down. That's fair. When did it start? She inhaled shakily. Emotionally, probably 6 months ago. My chest tightened despite preparing for the answer. And physically, 3 months. I nodded slowly. At hotels. Emily covered her face briefly. Yes. Business trips. Yes. Every answer hurt. But strangely, the pain also brought clarity. Because the unknown had tortured me worse than truth. Did you love him? I asked again. Emily looked horrified. No. Then why risk everything? She cried quietly before answering. Because he made me feel admired. Admired. Such a small word to destroy a marriage. I admired you. I know. Apparently not enough. That's not true. Then why wasn't it enough? Emily stared at me helplessly. Because something was wrong inside me. For the first time that sounded honest. Not defensive. Not manipulative. Just broken. I got addicted to attention, she admitted quietly, to feeling wanted. I studied her carefully. And me. What about you? Did you ever think what this would do to me? Emily burst into tears again. Every second now. But not then. She had no answer. Because selfishness is blind while it's feeding itself. Finally, the food arrived neither of us wanted. Neither of us touched it. After several long minutes, Emily whispered, "I'll spend the rest of my life trying to fix this." I looked at her wedding ring. Then at my own. "You can't." Her face collapsed. "Please don't say that. You betrayed me repeatedly, Emily." "I know. You lied to my face for months." "I know. You made me feel small." She cried silently. "I know. And the worst part." She looked up trembling. "I would have died for you." That sentence shattered her completely. Because she knew it was true. I spent years protecting her heart, while she entertained another man with mine. Emily reached across the table carefully. This time I didn't pull away. Her hand trembled against mine. "I loved you," she whispered desperately. Past tense. Loved. Not love. Interesting. I noticed immediately. And judging by her expression. So did she. Emily started sobbing harder. "I mean love, I love you." But it was too late. Because sometimes truth slips out accidentally during grief. And in that tiny mistake, I finally understood everything. At some point during her affair, Emily stopped loving me the way a wife should. Maybe temporarily. Maybe emotionally. Maybe unconsciously. But it happened. And once love becomes conditional, marriage becomes negotiation. I gently removed my hand from hers. "I think you loved the safety I gave you." Emily shook her head desperately. "No. I think you loved being loved." "That's not true. But I don't think you protected me." Silence. Heavy, devastating silence. Because she couldn't deny it. I leaned back slowly. "You know what I realized in that hotel?" Emily wiped tears from her cheeks. "What?" "I spent years trying to become enough for someone who secretly wanted more." "That's not fair." "It's accurate. You were enough. Then why did you need him?" Emily had no answer again. Outside the restaurant, snow began falling lightly across downtown Chicago. The first snowfall of the year. Funny timing. Everything looked colder suddenly. Emily stared at me with pure desperation now. "Please tell me there's still a chance." I looked at the woman I once planned to grow old beside. And for one dangerous moment, I almost said yes. Because love was still there. Buried under rage and humiliation and grief. But then I remembered Daniel touching her back at the party. I remembered coworkers pitying me. I remembered checking phone records alone in my kitchen while my entire reality collapsed. And suddenly, something inside me settled quietly. Not hatred. Acceptance. "I'll always care about you," I said softly. Emily's face crumpled because she understood immediately. Care wasn't enough anymore. Love wasn't enough anymore. Trust was gone. And without trust, everything else eventually suffocates. "Ryan, I can't spend the rest of my life wondering if I'm being lied to." She broke completely then. Open sobbing. Hands shaking. Shoulders trembling. The waitress glanced over sympathetically. I felt terrible. But not guilty. That's an important distinction. Emily whispered through tears. I destroyed the best thing that ever happened to me. I believed her. That was the tragedy. Because for the first time since this nightmare began, I think Emily truly understood what she'd traded away. Not just a husband. A safe man. A loyal man. A man who genuinely would have chosen her forever. And those men are rarer than people realize. We sat there for nearly another hour, talking quietly about logistics. The apartment. The divorce process. Separate accounts. Every practical sentence felt surreal. Like two ghosts organizing their own funeral. When we finally stood outside the restaurant, snowflakes melted against Emily's dark coat while traffic lights reflected across wet streets. She looked at me one last time. "Will you ever forgive me?" I thought carefully before answering. "Yes." Hope flashed across her face. Then I continued. "But forgiveness and trust are different things." Her expression shattered again. Because she finally understood. Forgiveness might heal anger someday. But trust doesn't resurrect easily once buried. Emily stepped closer slowly. "Can I hug you goodbye?" Goodbye. Another painful word. I nodded once. She wrapped her arms around me tightly and immediately started crying into my chest. And God help me. Part of me almost cried too. Because despite everything, this was still the woman I once loved more than myself. I held her gently for several seconds before stepping away. Then I walked toward my car without looking back. I knew if I looked back, I might hesitate. And some endings only happen if you keep walking. 3 months later, our divorce finalized quietly. No screaming. No courtroom war. Just signatures and silence. Emily resigned from Morrison and Blake shortly after Daniel was terminated during an internal investigation involving workplace misconduct policies. Turns out corporate affairs become inconvenient once legal departments get nervous. I heard Daniel's wife took everything. Good for her. As for me, I eventually returned to teaching. And strangely, standing in front of students again helped save me. Because 16-year-olds don't care about your broken marriage. They care whether you show up, whether you listen, whether you matter. And maybe for the first time in years, I realized my life had always mattered. Not because of status, not because of salary, not because some corporate room validated me, but because I was decent, loyal, honest, present. Emily taught me something painful in the end. Sometimes people do betray you because you failed. Sometimes they betray you because they failed themselves. And if I learned anything from losing my marriage, it's this. Never measure your worth by someone else's inability to value loyalty. Because the right person will never make you feel ordinary for loving them sincerely. And the wrong person will risk losing everything just to feel temporarily special. The last time I saw Emily was almost a year later. Completely by accident. I was leaving a bookstore downtown when I spotted her across the street, standing alone outside a coffee shop. She looked different. Quieter. Older somehow. Not physically. Emotionally. She saw me too. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then she smiled sadly. Not flirtatiously. Not hopefully. Just sadly. I smiled back politely. And in that tiny silent exchange, we both acknowledged the same truth. We had loved each other once. But love without loyalty eventually becomes grief. The traffic light changed. People moved between us. And when I crossed the street, Emily was already walking away. This time for good.